humbly thanketh thee, fellow infidels, for tuning in to another episode of The Nonprofits. This show is a product of the ACA, a 501c3 nonprofit organization dedicated to the separation of religion and government and promoting positive atheism. I am the conductor of this runaway train, Cynthia, but I am not alone. Nay, nay. I have with me, joined by profaners, misanthropes, and scoffers of the unfalsifiable. To my far left, I believe that's my far left, but let's just go with that, Ragabash Dabbler.
Hello.
Hello, how are you?
I'm doing great. How are you today?
I am well, and I believe that we have an additional host that is next to you, adjacent to you on your lap. Hello.
This guy. Yeah, this is Rowdy, the atheist dog. He just popped in to say hello.
Hi, Rowdy.
Say hi. Yeah.
Hey, Rowdy.
Yes.
Rowdy, want to go for a walk, Rowdy?
Don't do it. It's not fair. He can hear you through the headphones and now he wants to go.
Well, tell Rowdy to hold on about 90 minutes. So.
Right.
Rowdy, hold on.
You'll be all right. You'll be all right.
You'll be good. You'll be good. And to my immediate left is our guest host for the week, Nate Smith. Hello. How are you?
Hello, Queen Cynthia. Thank you for having me. I'm actually really excited to finally be on the ACA show that has the best theme music. So it's a little bit punk. I'm a little bit punk, so I am really excited and I'm ready to get into this stuff.
Well, I've been accused of being a little bit of country and a little bit of rock and roll, but I'm all city gal.
You're all class, and we all love rock and roll. So put another dime in the jukebox, baby.
That's right. That is right. And I just love how we just continuously roll with these particular puns, and we're going to be needing them as the course of this show goes. But if we will, let's just go hop right into it, shall we?
Let's.
Yes, quite. Let's do.
Indeed.
Yes. Yes.
Well,
do launch. Yes, quite.
Do that.
Yeah.
And let us start with a spot of tea and a little bit of shit, internet apologists say.
Shit, internet apologists say.
So this particular article actually comes from Fox News.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, lovely. The world's most trusted, reliable, well-sourced source of news ever. Lovely. Do go on.
Indeed. And I just want to say, see, people, we're not biased where we actually farm our material from. Even Fox News can get a little bit of something, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And this particular one is actually entitled Experts Sound Off on the Media's Negative or Absent Coverage of Religion, Incomplete at Best. And I also like to point out that there is a colon between religion and incomplete. Pun intended.
Wow.
I know, right? I know. So I'm just going to go ahead and read just a little bit from the article, if I might. So media experts argue that the Fourth Estates take on faith is tenuous at best and often tainted by politics, particularly in the light of a series of controversial reports on Biden's Catholicism. I was about to say Catholicism. That is not a word. The Washington Post was ripped last week for describing Biden as deeply Catholic. An analysis of the U.S. Conference of Catholic Bishops vote to advance a push by some church leaders last week to draft a formal document on the meaning of the Eucharist in an apparent attempt to deny and pro-choice. In an attempt. An apparent attempt, not just an attempt, but an apparent one, to deny Biden and pro-choice politicians communion. The Catholic Church opposes abortion as the taking of human life. Quote, again and again, the corrupt media just don't get religion. Fox News commentator Molly Hemingway replied after seeing the Washington Post described Biden as devout. The same weekend, the New York Times described Pope Francis as a liberal when tweeting out a link to its reports on the Catholic Church and abortion. And you know what? I think I'm just going to go ahead and just football it over here. I'm about to do a Hail Mary. Do you see what I just did there? All right. Rags. What you
Oh,
got
gosh.
here?
So one of the things that I thought was really interesting about this article in particular is where they sourced their information from. Because you're dealing with the Faith and Freedom Coalition and the Media Research Center. So the Media Research Center has existed since the 90s, and it basically exists to provide favorable analysis to conservative causes. So when we pull some of their numbers and look at kind of the way they broke them down, it starts to fall apart. And so even their inline citations, like the Conservative Media Research Center's Tim Graham said that the media can't have it both ways. The central point is this: liberals want to separate church and state, but they seem unable to let the church make internal decisions that affect their political standing. That's not what this story is about. That's an exact reversal of what this story is about. But they used a pull quote from a friendly source to reframe it as a liberal attack on the church rather than conservatives within the church disagreeing about the state of a person's faith. Like, they're weaponizing the no true Scotsman fallacy against the president of the United States and by proxy the Pope, and then blaming us for it.
Yeah.
That's what I think is so interesting about this article.
Oh my goodness. You know, when you just pointed out the portion, and I kind of chuckled, a little guffaw came from me when I read about they seem unable to let the church make internal decisions that affect their political standing. And I'm like, but they've already utilized internal decisions to actually affect a lot of standings, including trying to, we're not even going to talk about kid rape, but that's a whole nother story.
Right.
Okay. Catholic
We're going to
Church.
touch on that a little later. Yeah,
We are.
We'll get there. Yeah.
We totally are. But Nate, what did you think of this particular Fox News media piece?
I'm with Rags in that the whole thing was just a really disjointed, poorly thought out piece of writing. But I thought to myself, I'm like, okay, well, if the liberal media is so bad, let's look at Fox News's coverage of religion. So I'm like, all right, I went to Fox News, which for the record is the first time in my life I have ever went to Fox News for anything. But
What?
yeah, it's true. It's true. I live in a bubble.
goodness.
What can I say?
Oh my.
So I go to their news site and I'm looking at their headings, right? Like politics, sports, all the normal headings one would expect to see, but I didn't see religion. So I'm like, okay, well, I would think with the viewer base and the demographic that Fox panders to, that would be like front and center, but it wasn't. It was actually under the world. Like you had to like expand it so you get like the whole page of subjects. So, and under the world section, I found it. So I'm like, okay, let's see what Fox itself has as far as coverage of religion. And on the page, first I saw 3 articles about the popes getting surgery. I saw an article that sort of touched on the Canadian genocide of First Nations children, which we're going to be getting into coming up here. And another for the 10 church officials that were recently indicted for financial crimes. So I'm like, okay, well, so if we ignore, if we sort of account for the fact that 3 of those articles are about the same thing, literally 2/3 of their coverage of religion is negative. It covers like so maybe it's not the liberal media's fault. Like maybe if churches stop doing horrible shit, maybe maybe news outlets would stop telling people about it. Maybe
That
that's the
part,
problem.
that part. But wait a minute. But even when even if we go to the title, I was like, what experts? But to your point, right? you talked about like how like 2/3 of their coverage was negative, but we have like quotes in here from even I even saw like a quote from the Daily Caller, which is a news nonprofit founded by Tucker Carlson.
Tucker Carlson.
And the media only tolerates their own version of Catholicism. And but here's the thing, like obviously you're not indicting yourself in the way that you're actually covering, the news too. And to your point, Nate, like how do you help covering negative things when all that's in the news as of late, I mean, with all these different events that are coming up is pretty damn negative. I mean, like I don't understand like how we can get to like the niceties if like we have negative too, like because like even like the article even talks about how they were concerned or upset that you didn't really cover a lot of the charitable works, right, that actually the church or religion does. And then my thing is like, well, religion does not have the market share on being charitable. You don't have to be in a really and the thing about it is that, but if that was all that you did, don't you think that the media would actually cover that a lot?
Mm-hmm.
Anybody?
One would think, yeah. I mean, sorry, Rags, go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say, it's not any different across any other segment of society, though. Good news stories don't get the same amount of coverage as big, splashy, dramatic news stories, right?
Right.
You don't hear about atheists helping the homeless, going out and doing wonderful things. You don't hear about different groups helping to relocate people in bad situations. You just hear the tragedy of when they fail.
Right.
Or the tragedy of when somebody who is a figurehead within the community does something awful. That's why would we handle religion any differently, right? Like if we're talking about a big, powerful body, the things that we're most interested in is where they're going wrong. Because if they're doing it right, we shouldn't really be discussing them at all. We should just be happy they're there.
Correct. I mean, like, even if we like talk about like governments, right, that are governing people, hence the word government, they're not even if they're like, exacting like things that are good in communities. I mean, we're still going to highlight, if Congress people mess up or if presidents mess up or what have you. So my whole thing is, even if it's a religious institution, what would make them exempt?
Right.
Yeah.
And if a religious institution is going that far astray or doing that many things that are newsworthy, we should be talking about it because they exert a force on the rest of society.
Especially because they claim to be the moral compass for the rest of society. So when they turn around and do something completely antithetical to that claimed goal, it kind of stands out. It kind of resonates with a lot of people. And it's just like appealing to the good things that the church might do and shining a spotlight on that is kind of frowned upon in the Bible. I'm pretty sure there's an entire chapter about not making a big show of being pious and donating. There's also a little bit about hoarding wealth in there. It's in Matthew 6. Go read it. Yeah, it's if you haven't read it. So like I can't imagine, like they're trying to hold up, running a soup kitchen or missionary work as an example of the good work that the church does, and I don't think they understand that's not really the mitigating. That doesn't mitigate these as much as you think it does, right? Like I can't think of a worse reason to run a soup kitchen than to show off to my sky wizard or to lord it over the other people in my congregation. And
pun intended.
exactly. Or like to go on missionary work, like it's almost always tide selling, which by the way is illegal. just not for churches. But right, they're handing out Bibles. They're trying to convert these people, and that they're helping. So it's not like they're doing it out of the goodness of their hearts. They're doing it for two bad reasons, at least.
Right. I would say indoctrination and indoctrination.
Yeah. Yeah, but of different people. Like they're sort of pile driving the indoctrination of their own in group, and then at the same time gathering new recruits, which is what they do, I suppose. Poorly.
Well, I think that's usually the purpose of religion. I don't necessarily know any religion that does not like tout, especially, to evangelize, no matter like what you believe, right? It's always about, we need to propagate, the message, so that we can get more people to worship and to come into the fold and like, according to Rick Wiles, be saved so that they will not have their souls to be burning in eternal damnation in the lake of fire. Wake up. All that.
Yes. Oh, yeah. It's just like the quality of writing in this article was so bad, and then they only source people from their own side of the spectrum, claiming to be an indictment of the opposite side, and they're doing the exact same friggin' thing. I can't imagine anything more Republican than that. I mean, I'm Canadian, but I'm watching from the outside in. But I'm like, yeah, you guys do what you do, and you get better at it every single day.
That's the quote of the century. You guys do what you do, and you get better at it every day. But even to your point about sourcing your own people, I believe that one of the people, like I think that Nate, you mentioned earlier, no, Rags, you mentioned earlier about the executive producer from the Faith and Freedom Coalition. Timothy Head actually said that he too would slap red marks on the media's coverage of Christianity specifically. I would give it at best, an incomplete, at worst, a failing grade, because not only do they not cover it, but also most of the coverage tends to be on the negative side.
Timothy Head. Oh, Tim Head. Tim Head. Tim Head.
Timmy Head.
He helped pin Sesta Fosta. Like, he's been behind some of the worst legislation and social policies that have been enacted within the last couple of decades. And he, again, this is an example of somebody within the media who has undue influence, but people don't necessarily know him by name.
Right.
Putting information out there that gets picked up by these larger sources and then, like you said, propagated, but not, the investigation isn't there. And at the outset, this is just his opinion. He just doesn't like the way the church is being covered here.
Right.
Like exactly. That's all it is. This is not an analytical approach. It's a one-line op-ed. And but they quote him like he's somebody who should be sitting on a mountaintop delivering prophecy. And it's like, no, this is just a guy that runs an interest group.
But Rags, he's an expert.
So saith the article.
The evidence that we've seen is that the side of the aisle that he claims to be defending is doing the exact same thing. So where's your castigation of them? Like, he doesn't. There's no solution, right? There's no positive outcome for this. It's just a me. He's just shaking his finger at the camera, like, someone get this guy a broom so he can chase the liberals off his lawn.
You darn kids!
Get over my lawn! You're taking our gerbs!
Taking our gerbs!
Oh my goodness. Well, you know what? I think that we have spent enough time on Tucker's people. But I'm going to go ahead because I do want to devote more time for our next piece of conversation. But before we jump off of this into that, won't we go ahead and give our final thoughts? We'll start with you, Rags.
My final thoughts. I think this is a prime example, honestly, of understanding where the article you're looking at is sourcing their information. The spin that you're reading, being able to understand that in real time. And that's not a criticism of the conservative faction of the US or anything else. It's literally just know where they're getting the information and whether or not they're spinning it, because the facts quoted in the article don't support the thesis of the article.
Indeed. And Nate, what are your thoughts?
Well, first off, I agree with Rags. Like, sources are everything, but also trying to falsify your own beliefs is important too, right? Like, the first thing that I did was I'm like, okay, well, let's see what Fox is doing. And I'm like, let's take a look and let's actually see what they're saying. Maybe they're right. Turns out they weren't, but it's possible they could have been, right? So it's about sort of keeping yourself in a neutral standpoint and making up your own mind based on what you see, based on evidence, based on, good reasons for believing things, which this article had none of.
And my final thoughts is, I agree.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. That's very succinct.
My goodness. I think that when it comes to any of these, subjects, critical thinking skills, citing, actually going through your sources and even checking your own implicit biases, right? I mean, because like most these people who are writing the opinion pieces and the people who they are sourcing for their particular quotes and getting their thoughts are, these are their beliefs. And their beliefs absolutely influence their worldview, right? So they're going to have a certain a spin, a certain leaning when it comes to the subject matter. I did not hear them actually, even though they quoted the New York Times and they quoted the Washington Post, they never really actually spoke to like any persons from those particular journal outlets, right? Or nor did they actually be really, get like a field of people together that may have like a different ideology concerning this, right? So, I think to me, this is a perfect example of why it's dangerous to create your own echo chambers.
An excellent point. Excellent point. I agree, to quote Queen Cynthia. I agree.
Indeed. Yes, and everyone can actually call me Queen Cynthia for the rest of this particular show. Now, moving along. It has
yes,
been
Your Majesty.
It has been established, so let it be written, so let it be done. So let us move on, everyone. But before we move on, I got a little something to say. To you, fellow infidels that are watching, that if you haven't done so already, please subscribe to this channel and click the like button. The like button. I have an issue of saying like every time I do this. The like button below, and set the notification bell to on so that you are always notified when a new episode premieres every Sunday at 3 p.m. Central Standard Time. And we are now over 8,000 subscribers. Actually, I think that we're at 8.49. Right? That is
blowing it up.
Hey, now, once we hit the 10,000 subscribers, yes, thank you, 8.5 now, people. So once we hit the 10,000 subscribers, we can start doing fundraisers. So if you haven't subscribed yet, you can help us get there by doing so now. Call to action.
Do it.
Right now.
Do it now. Click the button and get the bell so that you get the notifications on your phone. Click like and subscribe and share with all your friends. Do it.
What Nate said.
You heard Governor Schwarzenegger. Let's do this. Come on.
Yes,
Sorry, that came out of nowhere, folks. I'm sorry.
Governor Schwarzenegger, Queen Cynthia Rags. You're going to have a title before it's all said and done. So share the link to our channel with your friends, your family members, co-workers, that neighbor guy you don't like. I got several. And anyone and everyone else, and especially on Twitter. So let's get the word out that there so that people and you and all those and people who can help us with those fundraisers. Right. Great. Now, the ACA has a new YouTube channel. So check
Ooh.
out the Atheist. Yes, I know.
Tell us about it.
I shall. So check out the Atheist Experience Network, a one-stop shop for all ACA shows in podcast form in one channel. Subscribe at tiny.cc/AEN podcast to listen to episodes of the Nonprofits, the Atheist Experience, Truth Wanted, and all of our other ACA shows so that you don't miss a single episode. And join our fan social media outlets. You can find most of the nonprofit hosts on the Atheist Community of Discord by going to tiny.cc/ACA Discord and on Facebook at facebook.com/groups/nonprofits live. And if you would like to support the show, you can do so by becoming an NP patron at patreon.com/the nonprofits. Support the ACA by shopping at smile.amazon.com and selecting the Atheist Community of Austin as a beneficiary. If you find yourself already shopping at Amazon, be sure to use that link to help out the ACA. We appreciate it. And we value your feedback. We really, really, really do. So tell us what you like, what you don't like in the comments, because we know you will. And email us at nonprofits at atheist-community.org. I'm going to say that one more time. Nonprofits at atheist-community.org. And as with all of our shows, the links of today's topics and the news we discuss are available in the description below. Feel free to pause this video, read the material for yourself. Don't just take our word for it. Remember, I just said, no echo chambers, people. No echo chambers. But make sure you come back to hear our discussion. All right?
One must. One must.
One must.
One must, or two must, maybe 3 or 4. Who knows?
Or 8,500. Or 10,000.
10,000.
10,000 is
Yeah.
basically what we're trying to say. End up. So there we go. So let us go into our next topic. And Nate, I believe that you're going to kick us off on this one.
Yes, I am, and this is going to get a little bit dark. The article is an opinion piece in the National Post about the residential school findings in Canada of we're into the thousands now of mass graves of victims of the residential school system. But the article itself is an opinion piece by Chris Selly that seems to focus on the fact that at the time of printing, only one Canadian politician had come out to condemn the defacing and burning of various Catholic churches across Canada. Now, this has been an ongoing thing. It's got worse. There are many more events that I'm going to talk about here briefly. But at the time, it was only the Conservative Party leader who had come out to say anything against retribution against the Catholic Church, vigilante retribution, I guess you could call it. And sure enough, the opposite side of our aisle, the Liberal Party of Canada, has since come out and issued an equally tone-deaf statement, which I would like to talk about a little bit. Our Prime Minister Justin Trudeau made a statement on Canada Day, saying that these spaces are places of worship for these Indigenous peoples. They're sacred spaces for people to grieve, which I find so incredibly insulting. Like, what about these events, the burning down of churches on Indigenous lands, makes you think these people want anything to do with the Catholic Church? Like, what makes you think this is their place to grieve? Even if they did want to go to a Catholic church to grieve, it's only because you kidnapped them and forced them into believing your line of crap. Like, it is so tone deaf and privileged. It really it really gets my dander up. And
I mean, to your point, I just want to interject this here, like, because like the first article actually says, like, when you said, on what principle can they justify silence with respect to another minority, indigenous Christians? And, I don't necessarily think it's so far to push back on, how did they become Christian in the first place? Like,
exactly.
Can we talk about that?
Yeah, exactly. You're the ones who took these children from their homes and forced them into this, and now to say, well, don't burn these places down because these people need these spaces to grieve. A great response that I heard from a First Nations chief was, don't burn these places down because they're crime scenes. That is a great reason not to burn them down. And I thought I was like, this guy's got it figured out. That is absolutely clever. But there has been updates. There's been more goings on since this article was published. It's an active, ongoing thing. This past week, 182 more unmarked graves were found in the Tunaha Nation in Cranbrook, BC, which is only a few hours away from me in British Columbia. So we are officially into the thousands.
Wow.
And this is 3 schools of the 150 so residential schools in Canada. We're only at 3, and we're already into the thousands. Like,
it's unfathomable. I mean, can you even think about, like, and especially as this particular story develops, and especially like you mentioned that we're talking about 3 schools so far, and it was over 150 residential schools. I mean, I don't think it's so far fetched to actually, think that they're going to find more.
Absolutely, they will. I was looking into this, and I was wondering, like, have there been any places they've looked that they haven't found it, or are we truly batting 1,000?
Ooh, that's a good question.
That's
Right.
a very good question.
That's a really good question to ask.
And had the government actually fulfilled its promises in the Truth and Reconciliation Commission that was, 2005, 16 years ago, and had we actually searched some of these grounds, we might have a good answer for that. But the fact is that the Kamloops bodies that were discovered, it wasn't the government that paid for that. It was the tribe. It was the native tribe. I know that building. I lived in Kamloops for 10 years. I used to drive by that building every day on my way to work. And it is I'm a skeptic, but if I could believe one building had bad mojo, that building is an evil place. And you just drive by and it does not look friendly. It is a bad place.
Rags, I'm speechless. I'm so sorry, guys, but like,
No.
I just
I have an awful lot to say, Cynthia, so it's okay. You can take a break.
that's just okay. I'm just
and one thing that you have kind of touched on, and I sort of want to take a different angle on just really briefly, is that it's atrocious how these buildings came to be important, right?
Yeah.
But there's also something to be said that we're pulling this from an opinion piece that was written about a 4th-page news story, right? This was not front page news when it happened.
Right.
And it speaks to a larger pattern of abuse and neglect of Indigenous peoples in North America. There are things that happen all the time. Most of the time it's our fault, and they're not well handled, they're not well publicized, and they're not much thought about. And so, like, the humanist part of me sees this socially important place for a lot of people, a place that reflects a melding of cultures. In the article, it specifically mentioned that in one of the churches, the stained glass vignettes had been changed to reflect merging with the native culture. And those places were taken down. And I'm not saying it was wrong. I'm not saying the person who did it did the right thing, but I'm also not saying they did it for the wrong reasons, right? You see somebody acting out of pain and out of disgust, and whoever was responsible, or whichever people were responsible for this, they were acting from an interesting place, and what I would consider a good place. But it also, for the people who have been indoctrinated in that system, it's incredibly painful. It's incredibly disruptive. It's what happens when pain reaches a breaking point, and it hurts everyone around them. And I think that that's easy to overlook, but also should at least be touched on.
Yeah, I was even thinking, like, when I read this particular opinion piece, I was thinking about the recent riots that happened in the United States after George Floyd's murder, and then I started to even ponder on the riots that happened in the '60s, specifically in Watts, and after that, those riots that happened, the President Lyndon Johnson created or appointed panelists for the Kerner Commission. I don't know if you all ever heard of it, but in the Kerner Commission, he tried to find the most middle of the road folks in order to kind of figure out, why are people rioting and what can we do about it as a nation. And one of the things that they said, that because at first they said, well, these people are just rioting because they just want to riot, they're just bad people, they like burning down buildings and ruffling up feathers and being agitators, right? They're anarchists. But when they actually did their investigation, they discovered that the reason why the rioting was happening was because of poverty and institutional racism that was driving inner city violence. And they came to the conclusion that massive government spending and shifting of resources needs to happen in order to actually quell these particular sensibilities. And that's exactly what did not happen. And I even remember in one of our other source articles where the Catholic Church actually signed an agreement promising to raise $25 million to compensate tens of thousands of other survivors of residential schools for emotional, physical, and sexual abuse, malnutrition, cultural shaming, and systematic violence of basic human rights. And I first want to say that $25 million is not enough.
It's certainly not enough, and not a lot for the Catholic Church.
But not right, because they and here's another thing: they don't have to raise it; they have it. And
yeah.
Well, they want their parishioners to do it, though. That's the thing. They want the Catholic people to donate it to them so that they can then regurgitate it for the victims of the horrible crime.
But here's the thing: so the same diocese that actually agreed to this raising of the $25 million ended up spending $28.5 million on a new cathedral, and they only raised $34,650 for the survivals. The survivors, I'm sorry. This is exactly what Dr. King said. He said that rioting, like when I look at these church defacings, he said that rioting is the language of the unheard. And oftentimes, if you're seeing, like, I remember it was like one photograph of I believe that it had like red paint on it, and it said, children were here, or
we were children.
We were children.
Yes, thank you. We were children, and and this is exactly what. And here's the thing. Oftentimes, there is never action when people are just pious or just say, oh, please help us. Like, oftentimes, radical things have to happen in order for radical changes to, transpire. Even though, like, I don't condone or support, defacing any property or burning down or anything of that nature. But, like you mentioned, Nate and Rags, I understand it. I get it. I empathize with it. You know,
I hear the message.
indeed.
And something else that isn't often touched on is how the Catholic Church went about escaping their commitment to paying this $25 million. They sought a secret arbitration with a judge to exploit the best efforts, in air quotes clause, of the Truth and Reconciliation Commission, and basically said, well, we tried our best. Nobody's given us $25 million. So I guess you guys are out of luck. And then after they got this judgment that, well, I guess you tried your best. They then waited months to announce it. And further to what Cynthia was saying, the next year, a cathedral in Toronto completed a $128 million renovation.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
Absolutely dwarfing what they promised to do for the victims of their crimes.
Oh my gosh.
For a cathedral in Toronto, a
Yes.
major metropolitan area that could have handled the renovations themselves.
On their own.
Absolutely. Absolutely. That it doesn't get more metro than that in Canada.
Come on.
I know my aunt lived in Toronto. I was like, wow, this is beautiful. But
Yeah.
but I and this kind of takes me back to our previous segment, talking about like news coverage of like negative aspects concerning religion. I mean, when you have egregious acts being committed, and then when you're found out about it and you're not making proper steps in order to rectify it, what do you want the media to do?
Right?
Yeah.
The answer is shut up, Cynthia.
Oh.
Exactly. Stop talking about you're persecuting us.
Right.
Oh,
Yeah.
yes. Oh, yes. The Archbishop of the Winnipeg Diocese has raised the ire of some folks by saying in a live stream service that the Catholic Church is receiving a persecution. There's a persecution going on here, he says. His words, not mine.
Yeah.
The level of privilege that it must take to think you are being persecuted for the murder, rape, abuse, neglect of hundreds of thousands of children. I can't. Like, I want to fall out of my chair.
In your silken cloth of gold.
Indeed.
Yes.
Right,
Yes.
right. That part that you've gotten from raping other cultures and colonization. Just saying. But here's the thing. Oh gosh, I could say so much, but just even going back to that whole persecution point, like it baffles my brain for constantly, again, these particular atrocities are being highlighted specifically by the Catholic Church, even though they're not alone in this religious I'm gonna beat the hell out of you and so that you can believe type thing.
Mm-hmm.
But like it just seems like they do not really ever take accountability for their role in really being adversely affecting people's lives. I mean, they don't take accountability for, hey, this is an institution that murdered people. This is an institution that turned the blind eye to pedophilia. This is an institution that that turned a blind eye to nuns being raped by priests and their children being taken away from them, either killed or put into adoption, and they never seen them again. I mean, it's a thing over and over and over again. And it's kind of like, then you have this whole conversation about, well, why are people leaving the church? I mean, hell, exhibit A, B, C, D, E, F, G. What the hell do you want?
Yeah. You have to be willfully ignorant to not see why people are leaving the Catholic Church. And for the record, there were other churches. It wasn't just the Catholic Church that was involved with this. There were other churches. The Anglican Church, Cynthia, which I know is near and dear to your heart,
oh dear,
every other denomination has paid what they promised to pay years ago, like over a decade ago. the Presbyterians, the Anglicans. They have admitted their wrongdoing and they have paid, and they are not in the news.
Mm-hmm.
So whatever negative coverage the Catholic Church is getting, they absolutely deserve. And one thing I wanted to bring up, because I feel like this doesn't get a lot of coverage in Canadian media, and I'm certain that it doesn't get a lot of coverage in American media, but folks seem to think that Canada is this oasis of liberal thinking, and it really isn't. Like, our government is absolutely just paying lip service to their commitment to First Nations peoples. Our Prime Minister, Justin Trudeau, Mr. Model Justin Trudeau, promised during his election campaign in 2015 that he would bring clean drinking water to reservations across Canada. At that time, there were 105 drinking water advisories in native lands across Canada. That 105, that just includes the water advisories that had been in place for over a year.
Wow.
It doesn't include any others, right? Just fast forward now to December of 2020. We're now halfway into Trudeau's second term, and they announce that they are not going to be able to reach their deadline, and they are not going to provide details on an update as to when we think we might be able to fix this issue for these people. So it's not like, it's not like this is a priority, because they're not rich and white. So why would it matter?
And one of the, I think, to kind of underscore that, like, a quarter of your country is water. It's all like really fresh ice melt water. It really, like, your entire country is a watershed. It should not be that difficult to fix something that fundamental.
Right.
And if we're looking at something that fundamental, and then we're extrapolating that to, like, the really tough stuff to solve, holy crap, what chance do they have? Like, what chance do they have of fair representation and fair action?
I mean, and that's even part of just like basic infrastructure for, those who are still within your nation. I mean, like, even though like reservations are considered tribal lands, but, there still should be basic infrastructure that the government is in placing in these particular lands. I mean, especially since, and we already know, even in the United States and in other parts of, the Western Hemisphere, how, like, oftentimes, First Nations people were herded into reservations. This wasn't not something that they chose to do. I mean, I believe that if they actually had their own choice, they would stay on the lands that their ancestors were born in and tilled and developed, right? I mean, like, goodness. So, and I don't understand how, like, I understand, like, okay, like, United States is like this thing, this power economic conglomerate, but Canada ain't that far behind, and I mean, just having, I even understand how you have to make a promise to bring fresh water to reservations. I mean, just do the goddamn thing.
Yeah, right. Absolutely. And it just speaks to our current government's level of hypocrisy, that they've literally done nothing about it, and then bring it up in a speech because, we found over 1,000 dead bodies, and that clean water thing. Yeah, we're totally working on that. Yeah, absolutely. There's a really good quote from another of our elected officials, the leader of the NDP, the New Democratic Party, Mr. Jagmeet Singh, who is probably my favorite person of color right now. Queen Cynthia, you're up there too. But so a reporter from a conservative news source tried to catch him the other day, and he's like, well, how is Canada going to pay for this? What, like, realistically, let's get real now. How are we going to pay to get clean water, the amount of infrastructure, water treatment plants that it's going to require to actually do this? How realistic do you think that is? And his response was so brilliant and shone a light on why that question is wrong. And what he said was, would you be asking this question if it was Toronto that didn't have clean water? Would you be asking me this if it was Vancouver or if it was St. John? Would this even be an issue of how much does it cost? No, of course it wouldn't, because we're one of the most wealthy nations in the world. If there's a problem and we really want to solve it, we can do it. And that just, it was so brilliant that it was such a succinct answer to this question that was supposed to be a gotcha.
Oh, hey, I can even one up with that. How about how we pay for everything else?
Yeah.
How do you pay for everything else? Like, you have a budget, right? And you have in your particular budget, you allocate funds to pay for things that you want to fucking pay for. You're wearing more than two more in a sense, so I could say fuck. So you
Okay, good. I'm glad I'm off the leash.
Yeah, you're good. You know, I usually open it for everyone. The fucks are now open. So here's the thing. That's what your budgets are for. You actually allocate funds in order for you to pay for things that you deem necessary to pay for. Infrastructure. For these particular reservations, because there are your citizens too, they are your residents too, should be a thing. And Catholic Church, just come off the damn money. You got it. You are the largest landowner in the world.
You have your own country.
You really do.
You have your own country.
You really do. And if you want to lead in a fuck right there, Rags, it's really okay.
You have your own fucking country.
There you go.
So also, and this is a place too, like in the larger picture, where we can look at what we do to Indigenous people as a microcosm of how we handle any minority, how we handle the poor, how we handle people of color, how we handle people from marginalized communities. But Flint just got clean drinking water last year. Marquita Bradshaw, that ran for Senate in 2020, grew up outside of nuclear waste and became an environmental activist because of it. The way that we handle anybody that doesn't have enough power to sway a vote in the free world is atrocious. And I think that looking at Indigenous peoples is a really convenient way of looking at that, because it's very easy to define. They've got physical borders. But when you take that and then you overlay it on all these other communities, you're like, oh, we're kind of doing wrong by everybody, huh? Like but again, like, that's not to take away from the struggles of Indigenous people, because holy crap, the water protectors getting maced and stuff. What are we doing? And when we have these huge entities like the church that are actively harming and not actively repairing harm, at what point do we push back? At what point is it socially acceptable to push back?
That part. When is that?
Now.
Right
There's
now.
actually a mayor in Canada who is a mayor of a small Indigenous town in Nunavut who has called for churches to be forced to pay taxes like the rest of us on their land. The churches receive a tax exemption on property tax. And this particular mayor, it's a small town. It's probably not going to go anywhere, but he was brave enough to go on, and this was newsworthy because somebody was like, whoa, what? Tax the churches? Whoa, what? Did you actually say that? And you're an elected official? And he's like, yes. And he said in his interview, he's like, yes, I am a white mayor of a predominantly Inuit community, and these people elected me, and this is disgusting. It disgusts me, and these people, this organization, this church needs to pay. Now is the time. So I think, I hope to see some progress here.
Yeah, I do too. Because before, as I mentioned before it's all said and done, they're going to find more graves.
Yeah,
of course they are. Of course they are.
Absolutely.
And in the effect of that particular cause of finding more graves, more properties will be defaced. And I don't have to be a soothsayer to predict that.
Yeah, but let's let's also just kind of acknowledge that we shouldn't get bored the 4th, 5th, 6th time that we hear that more bodies have been found.
That's right. That's right. There should be something that is always on our particular lips at all the time, all the
Absolutely.
time. Indeed. Because like oftentimes, like any of these particular communities, they need people outside. Like, I'm always, when I do activist work, when, for African Americans specifically, I'm always calling for, if you agree for policies, you should vote for them too, and you should lend your voice for these things too. And I would say the same thing with Indigenous communities. Even though I'm a U.S. citizen, I still believe and agree and say that no, you need to do right by these people. It's time to come to a reckoning, and it's time to do the right thing. So, as we just wrap up before we move on, Nate, I'm going to give you the final word on this.
Thank you. There's this sort of tone, there's this perception in the news coverage that this is like ancient history, that this happened all so long ago. Something I say to my kids is, it might not be your fault, but it is your responsibility, right? And they break a glass or, spill the milk or something. And there's this trivialization of it that, this happened so long ago. And I do find the attitude promising that, we are responsible and we want to make it right. But the long ago thing is absolute bullshit. Like my biological father was a resident of one of these schools. I'm 41. I'm not that old, right? Like he was wounded. He was an angry, violent man. This is not ancient history for people that went through this. Like the people that went through this are still alive. The people that were affected by it are still alive, and we are fucking pissed off. And that's all I have to say about that.
Heard.
Thank you. Very much so heard. And thank you for that. Okay, everybody, let's just go ahead and breathe in and breathe out.
I'm sorry. I know you guys can hear me hitting the table. I was trying not to hit it harder, man. I'm doing my best.
It's righteous indignation.
Never apologize for your passion. Absolutely not.
Never. This is what the nonprofits do. This is what we motherfucking do.
Yep.
So, people, let us go to our next You Dig. And I believe that Rags, you're going to go ahead and take us into it.
Yeah. So, You Dig. There is an article on the Washington Post. It's an opinion article. The Catholic Bishop's anti-Biden project is backfiring. So the article itself deals with the fact that the U.S. College of Catholic Popes got together and essentially, in a 3-1 vote, approved a statement saying they'd be in favor of blocking politicians from taking community for pro-choice stances. But because I'm a great big nerd, I chased all the inline citations down. And I think really the story of this article is watching the church backtrack when one sect of it floated a weather balloon and it got shot down.
Bang, bang, pew, pew, pew.
Absolutely. All right. So the U.S. Conference of Catholic Bishops seemed to have second thoughts about how it was all coming across, according to the article. So they issued a statement 4 days after the vote, insisting that there will be no national policy on withholding communion from politicians, and that the document would not be targeted at any one individual or class. So that's like a classic reframing, because what they originally said was, if you are pro-choice, we reserve the right to withhold communion from you. Let that sink in, because again, the three of us are not religious people, but I know at least a couple of us are formerly religious people. And the idea of a sacrament being withheld or a blessing being withheld is incredibly powerful on a personal level, but also if you are a public figure, on a level where it colors the way other people of faith view you and your actions.
Right.
So it was absolutely a political flex from an apolitical group, so that's the first part, is once they realized it wasn't going over well, they went, well, we didn't really mean it as mean as it sounded. But then if you start digging into the footnotes, during the 3-day meeting, the several bishops made conflicting statements about the document's intention. Other bishops pushed back to say there shouldn't be a special emphasis on abortion in politicians because such a document would politicize the sacrament. And specifically for us in the US and in a lot of the rest of the world, where we have specific legal separation between religious figures and political figures, politicizing the sacrament is sort of stepping your toe over the line. It sort of goes back to what we're talking about with the church being not taxable and with its social responsibilities versus its political actions. But so once they realized how badly this was going over, the USCCB released a Q&A, a public Q&A, where they answered popular questions from the public, but they excised any past mention of Joe Biden or a national policy focus on abortion. So like you get to watch them in real time, 3 days out, 4 days out, starting to walk everything back. And then they had a layman come out, like a PR official, essentially, Jade Hendricks. And he said that while Biden's election may have been the catalyst for the document's creation, it's part of a much larger concern among the bishops, right? So they're openly admitting this was started by the election of a specific individual with a specific political stance who is being acknowledged as a part of their church, and them wanting to distance themselves from that. But then also like, but we're not political, you guys. Like,
Of course not.
We're just shepherds guiding you home.
Don't be daft. We're not political.
Right? Like, there's so much more in the original article, but I thought that was so interesting just to watch them in real time with timestamps walk everything back when they realized it wasn't going their way.
Because they got called out on it. And I'm being like, I don't know why the hell the Catholic Church is going to try to sit up here and say that we're not political. The fuck you ain't.
Exactly. Right? It's almost like it's Groundhog Day, and every now and then they poke their head up to be like, have the evangelicals won? Is it the 17th century again? No? Okay, yeah, walk it back. Walk it back. Issue a statement now.
You know, it was funny. I saw this in the article that the author actually pointed out that a reporter for the New York Times, Jason Horowitz, noted that in much of Europe and Latin America, it is essentially unthinkable for bishops to deny communion to politicians who publicly support abortion rights. So like, and I found it like fascinating that the Catholic bishops felt that they could even insert themselves right here to the point where they felt that they have enough political power to actually exact change to even to possibly even deny Joey B. That's our president's boy band name. The way
Love it.
The wafer with the blood and flesh, and flesh, because they believe, because after the
transubstantiation,
that part is going to actually turn, and that's a damn shame, because I went to Catholic school, but you know that it turns into the actual blood, the Christ tartar.
Yum yum yum.
I know.
Or if it's spring ceviche,
that part. Easter.
God gazpacho, perhaps.
God spacho,
yeah, even better. Yeah.
Gazpacho, or I'm sorry, I was trying to come up with another one. Never mind.
Okay.
Saint Sushi. I don't know. I just say.
We're gonna stick with gazpacho. I think that was the best one.
I like gazpacho.
It's got the right consistency to it, the right color. It looks like what you're going for.
It's got zazz. Somebody meme that. Somebody make a meme.
I like
gazpacho, and we want to see it on our social media.
Gazpacho.
Best gazpacho meme gets a free nonprofits mug, and I'm sorry, Greg, for saying that. Now you have to do it.
Gotta do it.
Do it.
But this even goes back to like how so much that like politics and religion, especially like the Catholic Church, is so interwoven. Like it and this is the reason why there was a whole church separation, church and state separation in the first place, right? Because
Mhm.
like, even like when we talked about like the founding of the United States, and like even like, oh well, before founding of America, like a lot of people were coming over here specifically like pilgrims because they were trying to escape religious persecution. They wanted to be able to worship or whatever the fuck they did without the state's guise over them, right? And so but still we have like, the church saying, well, I don't like this elected politician doing this, that, so I'm gonna say, take away your wafers and your crackers and
You don't get no cookie.
not
Give me
a
that
damn,
cookie, boy.
not give it
me
to
that
it,
cookie.
all that, just
Give me
just
that.
give it to me. It's not even a cookie, it's a wafer.
I call it a cracker. And like, I
not
thought
even
of
a
this when I was
saltine.
reading this. I was thinking like, the idea of like withholding a cracker until you behave yourself seems like pretty shitty parenting. But like
That's
it really
absolutely what the
it's
church was.
it's so
Right?
bad, but it's
Shitty
like
parenting.
That's
Yeah,
literally how
it
I train
is.
my dog. I
But
give
the-
him
I
the
mean-
command over and over and hold the treat where he can see it until he does what I want him to do. And
Exactly.
Then I give it to him.
Exactly. And that is how this organization infantilizes people and indoctrinates them, right? It's that hanging the carrot in front of your head. Like, don't worry about this life. The next one's gonna be great. Promise.
Right.
Yeah,
Right.
promise.
Exactly. Even though we have no evidence to actually even back up that such a life even
Yeah.
exists.
Yeah. Well, and
That's what
I was just gonna say we could get into the theology of like whether or not the church doing the wrong thing means like God's mad at you or not. But
Mhm.
also there's the social aspect of it that like you're holding the treat for the dog, but then there are like a world of other dogs that are seeing whether or not the dog gets a treat and if he's a good boy or not.
Right.
And that's, you know what I mean? Like, that's literally what they're
Oh,
doing to the
man.
president and the pope right now.
I can't.
Two of the
They
most
just-
powerful men on the
Oh
planet.
my
They're just going,
gosh.
are you going to be a good boy?
Are
be
you
a good
gonna-
boy?
You gonna be a
Right.
good boy?
Not
I'll
you,
give
but
you a
you're always
cracker.
a good
I'll
Roll
give you a
over.
cracker.
Roll over.
That is
Take
literally
away
the
women's
final.
rights to control their bodies.
All that,
Okay,
all
do
that,
it.
all that.
Do
Do it right
it.
now. Do it right
Yeah.
now. Do it right now. That is really the final thought of this. We're holding a crack over your head to make you behave like a good boy. Pope Francis and Joey B, your boy band name. Oh my goodness. Well,
Oh my.
I think it's safe to say that we could go ahead and round out this whole discussion by going to our very last topic with a little bit of looking back.
Looking back.
I love that rock. All right. Well, when this particular show airs on July the 11th, this is also the day that Pope Clement the VII, I was counting, excommunicates Henry the 8th in 1533. The doctrine of excommunication is what we're going to be exploring today, and I'll give a little read to this. So it was on this date, January the 11th, 1533, that Pope Clement the 7th, Pope from 1523 to 1534, excommunicated King of England, Henry the 8th, from he was king between 1509 to 1547. Now, by Henry's time, the cutting tool of excommunication had lost some of its edge. Of course, any group that has the right to expel a member, but the Catholic doctrine then leaves no recourse for avoiding eternal damnation.
All of the above.
All the above, and then
Yes.
some. So this a little bit, the article that explores this a little bit. What exactly is excommunication for those heathens who don't know what it is? Well, let me tell you. Excommunication in the Roman Catholicism, according to the Catholic Encyclopedia, excommunication from the Latin ex, out of, and communion, yeah, communion. Communion literally means exclusion from the communion.
I was
That
thinking it was like John Wick. He's excommunicado, 3 million. You've got some ladies with tattoos typing out contracts.
that's the modern version of excommunication. Now, that was the most serious penalty that the church could inflict. Excommunication deprives the guilty Christian of all participation in the common blessings of ecclesiastical society and requires of the society to shun the excommunicated for his or her obstinate disobedience.
I'm clutching imaginary pearls.
Right,
Oh, oh
right,
no.
right. I'm just going to clutch my necklace because it's not pearly. But yes. But what are you guys' thoughts on this? Oh my goodness.
Ooh,
Excommunication, Henry
ooh,
VIII.
ooh.
Nate,
Can I go
what do you got?
first? Ooh,
Please,
ooh.
please,
Can,
please.
can I just point out how absolutely ridiculous it is that the church still uses excommunication as a tool of intimidation? They actually intimidated Juan Perón, the dictator of Argentina, for expelling 2 Catholic bishops that he suspected were publicizing rumors of his affair with an underage girl. They excommunicated him for that. The Catholic Church, okay, over sex with a minor. Like, oh,
Like, oh, you bad man, you.
How dare you?
that is just
Why?
everything you need to know about the Catholic Church and their level of bullshit hypocrisy.
Oh my goodness. I mean, like, I think it was even interesting, like, why, remember, the Catholic Church actually excommunicated Henry VIII.
Mm.
So we knew that Henry VIII married his first wife, who was the widow of his brother who died,
Mhm.
right? And so she became queen, but she had two. Was it 2 girls? Was it 2 or 3? 2 girls, right? I think it was 2. And she didn't have a son, but his mistress Anne Boleyn said, "I can give you a boy." And he's like, "Sword?" And he's like, she's like, "Oh yeah, boys are me. I can give you one." And he's like, "Okay." And then so he goes to the Pope and was like, "Yo, Pope, this is exactly what happened. The Bible according to Cynthia. Hey, give me an annulment from this chick right here because she ain't giving me no boys. And I need boys so I can go ahead and pass on my seed and my thrones. So I need, and Anne said that she can do it. So I need an annulment." And the Pope was like, "I gave you a special dispensation for the first wife who was married to your brother. I ain't doing it again." And King Henry was like, "The fuck?" And he's like, "Nah, I'm not doing it." And he's like, "Shit, well, guess what? I'm gone." And then there was some other priest who was like, "You know what? We ain't feeling Pope Clement either." Like, word? Right. So he's like, "You know what? Fuck it. We just about to start our own church. Church of Anglicans. Bam."
This is the best. This is the best recounting of the birth of the Anglican Church I've ever
If
heard.
there's not a fan video of this audio, we have failed.
Oh my.
But keep going. Keep going.
And then, like, Pope Francis was like, Pope Clement was like, "Man, fuck that motherfucker. You know what? Excommunicated. You gone, son." And Henry VIII was like, "Fuck you. I already got my damn church. I'm the king."
Oh wow. That is way better than the last Genesis story I heard. I have to say.
As a great big history nerd, I can't tell you how much I love your recitation of the Tudor dynasty. Holy
do.
crap. It's amazing.
And I should know, being a former Anglican Episcopal bastard child of the Anglican Church.
Oh.
Yes.
My mom is a lay Eucharistic minister with the Anglican Church.
Wow.
Yeah.
That
Yep.
is.
She can deliver communion and last rites and a couple of other things.
Indeed. You know,
Yeah.
I was even thinking about getting a collar in the Anglican Church just for shits and giggles. I'm thinking about still doing it, just because.
You
Might
should.
as well.
You should.
Yeah.
And then when they kick you out, you can start your own church, like
Right.
another person that got excommunicated, Mr. Martin Luther.
Right.
There
Exactly.
you are.
Disney
Right?
Or-
facts. These
Or
are
you
churches-
facts.
you could be like the news story of the week. Like, this lady priest thinks she's gonna change stuff.
She can't change things.
I'm
She has
sorry.
a vagina. How dare she?
And then when I actually start like the other portion, and they be like, "You're excommunicated," I'm like, "Whatever. I'm the queen."
Queen Cynthia.
Queen Cynthia.
Yes. Yes. Promise that I get to be a bishop or
All
a
day.
cardinal. A cardinal.
Yes, yes. I hereby dub thee, Nate Smith, Cardinal of the Queen Cynthia Church of Non-Believers. Hell, dub thee, dub. And Ragabash Dabbler, you are now the minister of all things Queen Cynthia Church-like adjacent, because I have dubbed thee here so forth, so with groundhogs, etc., etc., etc.
You can't expect to wield supreme executive power just because some watery talk through soul at you. I mean, if I went around saying I was an emperor, it's because some moistened bent and lobbed a scimitar at me. They put me away.
I didn't know we were best friends until right now.
That is my favorite scene in that film. The politically aware peasant. I love it.
I'm
Oh my
sorry to
goodness.
the viewers at home, because the three of us are just going to sit here and watch Monty Python for the rest of the night. It's
Yes.
over.
Pretty much. That's exactly what's going to happen, because no one expects the Spanish. Everybody, bring it in. Go over here.
Okay. Just
There.
calm it down.
There it is.
Yeah,
There it is.
There it is.
Nice.
There it is. Nice. I love it. So, what are our final thoughts on this particular excommunicato piece, Rags?
Okay, so like I did actually have a thing, because I am a great big history nerd.
Please.
Yeah, okay. So because this, like, the article we're referencing is more of a resource piece than an opinion piece.
Mhm.
I think it's really interesting to pay attention to the way that our political environment works now, and its intermingling with religiosity sort of parallels that of the Tudor dynasty and of excommunication in general, because you did have Henry VIII, who formed the Anglican Church. He was the original reformist, depending on who you ask, but like he was the guy that was like, nope, we're done with Catholicism. It's not even the same thing anymore.
Right.
But then right after him, you have this surge of his children and one cousin that completely changed the landscape like every 5 years for a little while. So you had him, and then you had Edward VI, his son, who died at 15, but
Right.
he was king for 9 years, and he was a Protestant reformer, and he hated his sister Mary. And when
she was Catholic.
because she was Catholic. So he came up on his deathbed with a legal way to give the crown to a Protestant cousin who reigned for 9 days, Lady Jane Grey. And
Mhm.
all she wanted was just to do her job. She was like the sweetest little girl ever. She was like 17 years old, I think, maybe a little bit older.
Mhm.
But she did it for 9 days. Then we came back, and all of a sudden you had Bloody Mary the First, who said about this Catholic Reformation of England after they were all like, but you just told us the other thing. And then you have and then you have Elizabeth, who was like, I don't care, I just want England to be strong. So
Right.
it's sort of this like quick interplay of having the right beliefs that shouldn't have anything to do with running the country
Mhm.
all of a sudden dictate where you stand in a way that you could lose your home or your life. But if you had waited 1 year to say what you said, you would have been like the cream of the crop. Right now, we're dealing with the same thing when we deal with our political parties, because the two parties in our country, at least, one has become distinctly a-religious and one has become distinctly religious in terms of the major voting blocks.
Right.
And the way you are shown to those people will change the way they think about you, regardless of public policy, which I think ties back into a lot of the other things that we've talked about today.
Mhm.
So I think that it, like, learning from this history, understanding not just the religious impact of excommunication, but the political impact of it, does a lot to show us why certain people emphasize the things they do and what some of these think pieces we've read today are trying to say.
Mhm. Mhm. And and even going back to what you previous mentioned, Rags, concerning about like how the two-party system, specifically in the United States, has become like either a religious or religious, right? And
Mhm.
we know so there are elephants and asses, right? So when it comes to even how you're leaning specifically religiously, oftentimes definitely affects like your ideologies concerning your politics, right?
Mhm.
I mean, like even that was like the whole portion of why these Catholic bishops came together to take away communion from Biden specifically because he is he is pro-choice, right? Or he believes in abortion rights rather, and Catholics is like, nope, we don't like that. So we're going to use we're going to flex our muscles and say, nope, you can't do it. Right. Same
Mhm.
thing happened, at this particular time period. Henry VIII, he flexed his muscles because he didn't particularly care for, the answer that he got from Pope Clement. And so he said, I'm out. And Pope Clement said, well, you're excommunicated. Even when you brought up, and historically, his daughter, Elizabeth I, she was also excommunicated,
Yes, I was going to say that. I
Yeah,
thought
yeah.
Elizabeth was excommunicated too at one point.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The
When are they going to learn it's not working?
right, the regis et excelsis was the order that excommunicated both of them.
Yeah, and Elizabeth was like, I just want him strong. We're just gonna go back to the Church of England because I said, yep, I'm redhead. See, red hair.
I'm redhead.
And
There's
another example of excommunication not working. Napoleon was actually excommunicated as well
Yep.
for occupying Rome, and his response was to kidnap the Pope and parade him around his empire, showing him off, forcing him to cede papal powers. So, I mean, if that's not the best argument for authoritarianism, I've yet to hear another one. So, just disclaimer: authoritarianism is bad. The views of the guests do not reflect that of the ACA, and Nate Smith will not be returning to the nonprofits. Just. Wait, did I just read that out loud? Oh,
Oh,
that was
no.
Cynthia's. That was Cynthia's part. Oh, man, first time, and I'm
Cynthia's so
screwing
shy and
everything up.
retiring.
not true. Anyway, so not true. Cynthia had nothing to do with that, and Nate will be back. How about that?
Oh, please.
How about it?
How about
Catch
that?
me outside.
Right. How about that?
Never mind. I retract my earlier statement.
Oh
Wow.
my goodness, people. You know what? We had, to me, way too much fun on this whole You Diggy. We really did. Like, I personally feel that we did.
I had a lot of fun. I'm glad I got to be on this show. I have been a fan of the ACA content for 10 plus years. So these last few months, actually getting to participate and volunteer behind the scenes and on the scenes has been an amazing journey, and I'm very grateful to be a part of it. Even though it's been amazing. I love it.
Mhm.
Yay! Well, Nate, we're again glad that I was actually able to join us. But at this particular juncture, I am supposed to do a summary. Insert summary here. So, what did we learn today, kiddos? Well, on Shit Internet Apologists Say, we discuss how Fox News whines. But this time, they are whining about no one in the media having to say good things about religion or just ignoring it altogether. Yes, more of that, please. More of that, please. And we discussed the church vandalisms in Canada after discovering more unmarked graves from residential schools geared to the indoctrination of Indigenous children. And we also spoke on how Catholic bishops want to take Joe's wines and wafers again, his Christ Tartar, but because of his support for abortion rights.
Gazpacho.
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 Gazpacho. And we came around the bend to finish this dog and pony show. We're looking back to Pope Clement VII's excommunication of jolly old Henry VIII. Oh, so what are our final thoughts with everything? How are we feeling? Rags, what are your final thoughts with everything?
I think with the stuff that we went over today, my biggest takeaway, and it's one of the things that I love about the ACA, but it challenges me to think about why somebody's saying the things they're saying to me, why they're presenting something in a certain way, and if I look at it objectively, what other information I can find.
Word to your mother. Word to your mother. And Nate, our guest host for this afternoon.
Two thoughts. One, this show needs more Monty Python references.
I agree.
Okay. Two is not nearly enough.
Never.
And also, like kind of what Rags was saying is get out of your bubble. Like try to falsify your beliefs, right? Especially as a liberal who claims to care about evidence and who claims, is in the skeptic community, right? If you truly do want to believe as many true things as possible, get out of that bubble and look at the other side. Look at what they're saying and try to put yourself in that position. I think it was Bertrand Russell who said it's the mark of an educated mind to be able to entertain an idea without accepting it. I think I might be way off on that, but I think it was him. And that is truly something that we all need to do more of, because if we could walk a mile in another person's moccasins, we might not kidnap Indigenous children and force them into, horrible conditions. And that's all I have to say about that.
Or Doc Martens, whichever comes first.
Well, Doc Martens wouldn't be so bad.
No, actually, that's true. Especially with like an arch, support system, something to that effect.
I spent most of my teen years in Doc Martens, so
relatable.
Very relatable. Are we all teenagers? Like, are we all like kids of the '90s? Like, was that our formidable like teenage years?
I'm literally sitting here with my head in my hand, swooning at you guys. So.
Oh my gosh, bring it in, guys!
Aww. Cynthia, what about you though? Do you have any final thoughts to leave us with?
Yes, I agree. I agree. And again, be able to entertain thoughts that are not necessarily something that you originally came up with. Utilize critical thinking skills in order for you to come to conclusions, and don't be afraid to change your mind.
Amen.
Amen.
And one more thing. Christ Tartar. God's macho.
Queen Cynthia.
Queen Cynthia, everybody.
Hey.